Hey everyone, welcome to Dollar Games, and some JRPGs are so good, you just want to see them with a fresh coat of paint and a second chance in the spotlight. Now, the problem is, a lot of these games are stuck on old hardware, or they're impossible to find without paying a small fortune, or just haven't been touched since the original release. Now, this video is about the ones I think deserve another shot. Some of them are cult classics, some of them are fan favorites, and all of them are stuck in gaming limbo. But they mean a lot to me, and I would love to see them get the love they deserve and a modern way of playing. But before we start with the list, I want to thank all of you that have subscribed and showed me love on this channel. I've been having a blast figuring out my voice here, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Now, if you continue to love my content, please think about subscribing to my channel as I work towards hitting 1,000 subscribers, which is crazy. Anyways, let's get into it. Radiata Stories is one of those games that a lot of people missed back in the day. Having been released at the end of the PS2 lifecycle, it definitely flew under the radar. The wild thing about it is it's literally the best looking JRPG or even game on the system, taking advantage of things like widescreen and progressive scan rather than the typical interlaced look. Radiata Stories is one of those games that ropes you in right away with its charm and constant sense of humor, but also isn't afraid to tackle heavy subjects. On the surface, it's a colorful PS2 JRPG with a goofy, slightly cocky protagonist named Jack Russell. Hold up, let me check my notes on that name. I mean, there's gotta be a joke somewhere in there. Alrighty then, well, let's move on. Also, there is a bustling city to explore and more NPCs than you can count. But the more time you spend in its world, the more you see the cracks. Tension between the humans and non-humans, shifting alliances, and the sense that peace is a lot more fragile than anyone wants to admit. And then the game hits you with the choice. The point where you have to decide which path to follow, knowing it will lock you out of the other half of the story. So prepare to feel the need to play it twice, or if you're like me, save right before the choice so you can at least save yourself some time. Now, what makes the choice work is how alive the game feels leading up to it. Radiata's world is packed with over 170 recruitable characters, each with their own schedules, routines, and little quirks. You're not just recruiting faceless party members, you're finding the guy who sweeps the plaza every morning, the shopkeeper who closes early for dinner, or the mercenary who's only around at night. It's a world you get to know, and when the story forces you to take a side, you're not just picking a faction, you're deciding which friends you're going to lose. That's a lot of weight for a game that also lets you kick random townsfolk.
Hey man, did you touch my drum set?
Nope.
It's just weird, cause seems like someone definitely touched my drum set.
Yeah, that is weird. Because I didn't touch them.
Hey! Did you touch my drum set?
Hey, knock it off!
Combat's real time, a little scrappy, and more about party synergy than pulling off complex combos. You can link attacks with allies, experiment with formations, and see how your eclectic crew handles itself in the middle of a brawl. It's not the smoothest combat system on the PS2, but it works. And it has this unpredictable, anything can happen energy that keeps it interesting. In all honesty, Radiata Stories isn't trying to be some sort of epic save-the-world saga. It's more focused on the nuances of relationships and the characters within the story. That's why it stuck with me all these years, and why I love bringing it up any chance I get. It's a beautiful game with some rough around the edges aspects to the battle system, but with a remaster, this game can be cleaned up and made even better. Rogue Galaxy, much like Radiata Stories, came out at the end of the PS2 lifecycle, and fell under the radar as well. It's definitely one that I didn't end up picking up right away at the time, but I did grab it later down the line. What really interested me is that it reminded me of something along the lines of Treasure Planet and Tainei. And don't get me started on Tainei, because I could go on. I was obsessed and even owned the side story books to that movie because I'm kind of a nerd.
I put a button on it, yes. I wish to press it, but I'm not sure what will happen if I do.
Anyways, Rogue Galaxy is the kind of game that feels like it was made for anyone who grew up loving big Saturday morning adventures. You've got a scrappy hero from a desert planet, a ragtag crew of misfits, and a quest that bounces from one colorful world to another. It's a pure space opera, but instead of moody sci-fi grit, it leans into the pulpy, high-energy storytelling. It still looks great for its time thanks to the cel-shaded art, but playing it now reminds you that camera controls and lock-on systems have come a long way since 2005. The real hook is in the variety. Each planet feels distinct. Lush jungles, frozen wastelands, bustling cities, and the side content is just as packed as the main story. You can hunt rare monsters, build ridiculous weapons, run a factory line like you're working intergalactic retail, or compete in insect tournaments because why not? It's the kind of game where getting sidetracked is half the fun, and before you know it, you've spent hours chasing distractions that have nothing to do with saving the galaxy. Now, combat's fast-paced, real-time, and full of flashy abilities, but it also shows its age. Enemies can be damage sponges, and the AI has that PS2 era tendency to occasionally wander off mid-fight. Still, the energy of it, the quick weapon swaps, the special moves, the chaos of juggling a fight while trying not to get surrounded keeps it from ever feeling boring. Rogue Galaxy's world is big, bright, and just the right kind of over the top. With this game, we are lucky to have it on the PlayStation Classics catalog, but honestly, that's just selling it short. We should give it the modern remaster it deserves with tighter combat and a smoother camera, and it could easily find a whole new audience. Alright, hear me out. I want a remaster of a remake of a beloved game from the PS1 era. That felt like a mouthful, but I mean it. Wild Arms Alter Code F is one of those remakes that feels like a love letter to the original while still making big, noticeable changes. It takes the 1996 PS1 Wild Arms with its dusty western towns, ancient ruins, and magic meets technology setting and rebuilds it with full 3D environments, expanded story beats, and an updated party system that adds characters who weren't even playable before. The core of the story is still there, a group of drifters chasing down a mysterious weapon while uncovering the truth about their world. But Alter Code F gives it more room to flesh out both the story and the characters, which makes the characters feel richer and the stakes feel bigger. The remake keeps that unique Wild Arms identity. You know, with its equal parts gunslinger western and JRPG fantastical situations, but it also smooths over some of the rough edges from the original. Towns feel more alive, dungeons have more variety, and puzzles still play a big role in exploration. It's not a remake that tries to rewrite everything. It just gives the original more personality and more detail without losing its sense of adventure. And yes, the soundtrack is still filled with that incredibly melancholic harmonica that makes you feel nostalgic for an era where watching the Wild Arms intro on repeat was considered a thing to do with friends. If anything, Alter Code F's biggest issue is that it's been locked away on the PS2 for nearly 2 decades. It's not the easiest game to track down now, and that's a shame because it's one of the few remakes that feels both faithful and fresh. I recently picked it up at Midwest Gaming Classic up in Milwaukee. It's definitely not cheap and only playable on those with a PS2 and a way to play it on modern displays. So a modern remaster could keep its PS2 era charm, polish the pacing in a few spots, and make it accessible for the players who never got the chance to see what made Wild Arms so special in the first place. This one doesn't deserve a release. It deserves a full-on return to the spotlight. Suikoden 3 took the series' big cast and political intrigue and gave it a unique twist. 3 main protagonists, each with their own point of view on the same war. You don't just get one version of events, you see how misunderstandings, loyalties, and personal agendas shape the conflict from all sides. At first, it's a bit disorienting to swap perspectives, but once the pieces start to connect, it becomes one of the game's biggest strengths. It's still very much a Suikoden game at its core. 108 stars of destiny to recruit, a sprawling world, and a story that balances personal drama and sweeping political stakes. Recruitment is as addictive as ever. Each character feels like a little piece of the world's history, whether they're a seasoned warrior or a shopkeep. Now, as your headquarters fills up, it starts to feel less like a base and more like a community. The war system and one-on-one duels return, breaking up the standard turn-based battles with set-piece moments that raise the stakes. It's a slower burn than some other JRPGs, but the payoff in world building and character development is worth it. I remember picking this game up the day it came out, and I was obsessed with it. Each of the 3 characters bring a certain personality to the story, and I was hooked on seeing where things were going to take them. Now, the downside, like a lot of PS2 JRPGs, Suikoden 3 is stuck on old hardware and hasn't had an easy way to play it in years. A remaster could clean up the muddy visuals, sharpen that UI, and most importantly, get it in front of players who missed it the first time. Even as someone who loves this game, I can admit that it doesn't look great in terms of character models and character animation in general. It's always been a bit wonky, but I think that can definitely get ironed out in a remaster, especially since Suikoden 1 and 2 finally got the remaster treatment. It's the perfect time to give this one the same love and let people see how bold and interesting it really was. Alright, Legend of Dragoon is one game I feel I have to talk about, because if I don't, I'm sure I'll get all sorts of comments from the fans telling me how I'm terrible for not adding it to my list, because you guys are really passionate. But in all honesty, I want to see this game remastered just as much as you all do. Legend of Dragoon is one of those JRPGs that lived in the please remake this conversation for over 20 years, and for good reasons. On the surface, it's a classic PlayStation era fantasy. You've got your dragons, your ancient powers, and a party of heroes trying to stop the end of the world. All the cliches. But that's fine. What stands out about this game are its additions to the combat system. Instead of just selecting attack and watching numbers fly, you've got to time button presses to land longer combos, making battles feel more interactive without turning them into pure action. It's a small thing, but it gave the game an identity in an era flooded with turn-based systems. The story plays it big with mystery-filled pasts and of course, betrayals. And it also has this earnest, slightly melodramatic charm that's hard to not like. I'm looking at you, Final Fantasy VIII. Oh, and we can't forget Dragoon transformations, as they are some of the most flashiest moments in PS1 RPG history, and they bring a real sense of power when you finally unlock them. Now, the characters have enough depth, and while it leans into certain JRPG tropes of the time, there's a sincerity to it that's aged surprisingly well. You can tell it was made to feel epic, and in its own way, it still does. The downside is that it's trapped in 1999. The long load times between battles make it a bit of a slog now, especially for new players. A remake could smooth the pacing, modernize the visuals, and give the combat tighter timing windows without losing the satisfaction of landing a perfect addition. Especially since the classics version runs on the PlayStation emulator that adds some lag to the button timings, which isn't great. Honestly, they wouldn't need to reinvent the wheel, just polish what's already there. If any game has the fan base and potential to make a big comeback, it's this one. So Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology is one of those games I personally need to have remastered. Having somehow missed both the DS and 3DS version of this game, I'm at a stage in my life that I want to play it on a bigger screen, or at least switch big, because this is one of Atlus's best RPGs, and yet it's trapped on the DS and 3DS, two handhelds that aren't exactly the easiest way to play in 2025. This game deserves so much more than being stranded on outdated hardware. Plus, I broke my 3DS, so please help me. I don't want to spend the current used market on a new 3DS. At its core, Radiant Historia is all about time travel, but it isn't the usual go back and fix one mistake setup. You're constantly bouncing between two branching timelines, using knowledge from one to change the outcomes of another. It sounds messy, but the writing is sharp enough to make it work. The characters feel grounded, the world feels lived in, and the stakes are high without turning into cartoonish melodrama. It's one of the rare JRPGs where going back to replay a scene is baked into the actual story instead of feeling like a chore. Now, the 3DS remake did a lot of things right. It added voice acting, extra story content, and updated art. But let's be real, it still looks and feels like a handheld RPG. A modern remake could smooth out the pacing of timeline hopping, bring the grid-based combat to life with more flash, and give the whole experience the presentation it deserves. They don't need to reinvent anything. The story, the systems, the heart of the game are all there. They just need to put it on a modern console and finally let people appreciate why Radiant Historia is one of Atlus's best kept secrets. Shadow Heart's Covenant is one of the rare sequels that takes everything the first game did and turns it up to 11 without losing that weird charm.
These go to 11.
Set during an alternate version of World War I, it blends political intrigue, supernatural horror, and absurd humor into a story that gives the game its own charm that actually works super well. You're traveling across Europe and Asia, dealing with demons, secret societies, and historical figures reimagined through the series' twisted lens. At the center is Yuri Hyuga, a sarcastic, battle-scarred protagonist whose personal struggles give the bizarre plot a surprisingly grounded human aspect to it, which helps pull you into the story through a relatable character. Now, the Judgment Ring system returns from the first game and remains one of the most engaging ways to handle turn-based combat. Every attack, spell, and item used is tied to a timing-based wheel, so you're always actively involved in battles instead of zoning out. Covenant adds depth with character-specific abilities, fusion monsters, and combo attacks that make fights feel dynamic. It's the kind of system that's easy to learn but keeps you engaged all the way through the game's long runtime. And because this is Shadow Hearts, you'll go from fighting eldritch horrors in the cathedral to helping a vampire pro wrestler train for a match. And somehow, it all feels like it belongs in the same world. Visually, it's aged, but the atmosphere still holds up. It's got the muted colors, striking character designs, and just enough surreal imagery to keep you on the edge. A remaster could easily sharpen the graphics, smooth out the animations, and make the game's strong art direction pop even more. The story is still unlike anything in the genre. The combat hasn't lost a step, and the tonal mix of creepy and comedic is something modern JRPGs rarely attempt. Covenant isn't just worthy of a remaster. It's the kind of game that could find a whole new audience if given another chance. Alright, Skies of Arcadia is one of those games that has lived rent-free in JRPG fans' minds for decades, and for a good reason. Originally on the Dreamcast and later ported to the GameCube, it's basically the definition of adventure. Instead of a moody or overly dark RPG, you're airship pirates sailing through floating continents, discovering uncharted lands, and occasionally butting heads with an evil empire. It's bright, it's optimistic, and it's exactly the kind of game you just don't see enough of anymore. It's also one of those games that keeps getting ignored. You see things like vinyl and figures coming out for it, but still, it sits with no modern way to play it. Come on, Sega, who doesn't love pirates? You know we do. What makes Skies stand out is its mix of classic JRPG battles, large-scale airship combat, and pirates. Regular fights are solid turn-based fare, but the ship battles are where it really shines. They're slower, more strategic, and feel like naval duels in the sky. Exploration matters too, with hidden discoveries scattered all around the map that makes poking into the corners of the world actually rewarding. Because treasures equals pirates. Pirates. Add in the fact that you slowly recruit crew members who bring different bonuses to your ship, and it makes you feel like you're building something bigger than just a party of adventurers. The problem is, unless you still got a working Dreamcast or GameCube, this game has been stranded for over 20 years. It's never had a proper remaster, which is a shame because the colorful style and upbeat tone would look incredible with modern visuals. Speed up the battle animations, give it widescreen support, polish up the menus, and you'd have a JRPG that could easily win over both old fans and newcomers. Fans have been asking Sega for Skies of Arcadia revival forever, and it's about time it finally got the remaster it deserves. Xenosaga is one of those trilogies that feels impossible not to bring up when talking about remasters. It's ambitious to the point of being overwhelming, but that's also what makes it unforgettable. Across 3 games, you follow Shion Uzuki, a scientist pulled into a war against the Gnosis, while slowly unraveling a story full of philosophy, religion, psychology, and some of the heaviest themes ever attempted in a JRPG. And of course, there's Cosmos, the cold, battle-ready android who basically became the face of the series. It's dense and sometimes messy, but when the pieces come together, it delivers story beats that go places no other JRPG can even imagine going. Now, combat took a different approach in each entry. The first game leaned into a slower, more tactical turn-based style with combos and tech skills that rewarded planning ahead. The second game tried to reinvent the system, but ended up feeling clunky, even if it introduced some interesting mechanics. By the third game, everything finally clicked. Fights became faster, more fluid, and the balance between strategy and spectacle felt just right. Across all three, enemies appear on the map, so you can plan your approach instead of stumbling into random fights. And the boost system kept you thinking about turn order in a way that gave even regular encounters some weight. Now, let's get into the biggest problem with Xenosaga and how it's truly an imperfect trilogy. You see, I remember when they first announced the series, and being a Xenogears fan, I was locked in. I pre-ordered the first game and played it non-stop when it came out. But then it all went south when Takahashi-san was kicked off the project for the second game. All of a sudden, everything changed. Art direction, story beats, battle system, and it just felt wrong. Because of all of this, a 6-episode series of games spiraled down to 3. Now luckily, Takahashi-san came back for the third game and salvaged whatever he could with the situation, but that also made it where 3 didn't sell well, and now we're looking at a high cost for that game. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that with a remake, Bandai Namco can work directly with Monolith Soft to reimagine the Xenosaga story and fix all the glaring issues. Plus, it would be a perfect opportunity for Takahashi-san to actually fully develop his vision with this series, especially since he has proven himself with Xenoblade. This is a deeply personal one, and I'm hoping we see this in the coming year. So there you have it, 10 JRPGs that are just begging for another shot. Some of them are cult classics that slipped under the radar, and others are just fan favorites that have been stuck on old hardware for way too long. And yeah, I know there are plenty more I could have included, and honestly, the list really never ends. But that's the point. So many of these games are hard to play today, even though they still hold up in terms of story, characters, and gameplay. They just need to give us a way to experience these worlds again, or maybe for the first time without having to drag out a CRT or track down some overpriced copy on eBay. If you've got a JRPG you think deserves a remaster, drop it in the comments, and I'd love to see what everyone else is hoping for. And hey, maybe if we keep shouting loud enough, someone out there will finally actually listen to us. As always, if you love the video, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care, everyone.